In 1883, something impossible happened in the seas between Java and Sumatra. An entire island vanished, and with it, nearly 20,000 souls were erased not just from life, but from memory. Not even a name preserved in the ledgers of empire. It's as if they were never there, and yet they were. And somehow, before the sea took them, they knew. No monuments, no gravestones, the rhythm of storms, of birds of fishing nets pulled heavy from the reef. August 1883. The Dutch East Indies. This was a land ruled by rhythm long before it was ruled by empire. The kind of place European officials passed without a second glance. Fish that floated dead in the shallows, too bloated for songbirds to touch. After all, there was no coffee grown here, no sugar worked, no roads or churches or rail, just thatched roofs, dense jungle, and a population of native fisher folk who answered to no paper crown. And at the heart of it was her, and the moon it shone orange, rimmed in bloodlight. Villagers called it unsettling. Paman Raka called it an omen. And overlooking all of it like a god sleeping with one eye open was Krakatoa. His Dutch was rough, learned decades ago from missionaries who built a school that washed away the following monsoon. He studied the page, eyes wide. It was a log, a warning, recommendations for evacuation, pending colonial prioritization. Evacuation never came. Inside was a broken compass, and beneath it, a scrap of parchment still barely legible through Dutch script. It warned of volcanic instability, not just in Krakatoa, but in the seafloor beneath. But just west of it stood another island, smaller, crescent-shaped, marked on the old maps as a fishing island in the middle of nowhere. Didn't make the cut. She showed them the paper. No one responded. One wreck washed ashore days later, split down the center as if crushed by something ancient and angry. Others stayed. What else were they to do? Their entire world was fading into rotten sky and booming earth. Hair like a forest vine. She'd never left Sertung in her life, but she knew every shoreline, every flowering branch, every face in the market square. Markings left in ash. When birds landed and quickly left, where Krakatoa was power and terror, Sertung was life. Simpler, quieter, weather-warped but intact. It was not in Dutch, it was not in Javanese, it was something older, a stone altar, half hidden behind a curtain of vines, recently uncovered by a landslide. These are the words of our ancestors before boats. He whispered, before maps. We called it the sky drowning. He placed his hand on the pages, reverent, but Ayudya knew, and now, so do we. It hadn't been seen in generations if ever. Carved with petroglyphs, sea ice spirals, and figures covering their faces from the sky. Her name was Ayudya 17. Barefoot. Their warning was inscribed for those who remain when the mountain chants again. It was ancient sacrifice, forgotten by Historia ghost, sitting on the edge of disaster, waiting to slide into the sea. Again, she looked to Krakatoa, and this time, it looked back. It's not a story, he whispered. It's a cycle. Each morning, before the sun crested the volcano, she listened to the jungle breathe. Not out of wonder, out of fear, because something in the wind felt wrong. She was a daughter of the sea, and the granddaughter of Payman Rokova, island's oldest storykeeper. Another laughed and tossed the parchment into the sea, saying volcanoes do not favor fishing villages, but the logs weren't lies, and the voice beneath Sertung was rising. But when she looked out toward the east, Krakatoa was not sleeping anymore. It started quietly. Strange tides, birds that changed their nesting grounds. By late May, the fishermen avoided the southern coves altogether. The water warmed, then swirled, then hissed. Ayudya climbed to the highest ridge on the island one night, just before full moon to pray, alone, near the banyan trees. A low plume of smoke bloomed above its blackened dome. Red veins streaked the sky. That night, Ayudya opened a chest of spoiled rice and found a bundle inside tripe, half-molded, stained by seawater. She couldn't read it, but Raka could. The log, dated March 1883, had been left by an unnamed Dutch surveyor. According to the passage, tectonic anomalies suggest Sertung risks full descent should Krakatoa erupt. No word reached Sertung. No colonial boats landed. The Dutch administration in Batavia prioritized sugar plantations and military strongpoints. And as the earth growled louder beneath her feet, Ayudya began to understand something terrible. They were already written off. By mid-June, ash fell like soot on leaves. The air thickened. Some elders fell sick and never woke. Ayudya tried in vain to rally others from her neighbors, to the coastal guards, to passing Dutch patrol boats. One officer told her islands had no business reading documents. Some tried leaving. Makeshift canoes vanished into fog and never returned. There were no ships large enough, no roads to nowhere. Still, Ayudya climbed the ridge every day. She started drawing what she saw. Smoke shapes, eerie type patterns, and that's when she found it. Underneath it, she found something buried. A journal, wrapped in sharkskin leather. Raka trembled when he saw it. According to the journal, another island, centuries ago, suffered the same fate. A pillar of fire followed by a wall of ocean. Certain Ayudya realized that night was not just in danger. Sertung was marked on maps for centuries, but only once was it marked for death. And that death was never supposed to be known. Not by Jakarta, not by Batavia, not by anyone outside this island chain breathing the same ashless air, because sometimes it takes more than memory to hold on to history. It takes voices willing to speak for the silent. This is the forgotten file. All her life, Ayudya had been taught that danger comes with sound. The thunder of storm tides smashing boats against the reef, or the bark of wild dogs at night. But the danger now was too large for sound. With stillness, with a jungle holding its breath as if it, too, was awaiting judgment. It came with silence. The journal she'd found in the roots of the stone altar spoke of this silence. It spoke of ancestors who prayed not to survive, but to leave a mark before the sky turned to fire. Their names were never remembered, their gods forgotten. Ayudya didn't want that to happen again. With Raka's help, Ayudya spent 3 sleepless days transcribing fragments of the ancient journal. He handed her a cloth bundle. The drawings she had made, the warnings, the old log, the compass, the journal translations, warnings carved into metaphor. Rivers that boiled, stars that hid, villages swallowed not by fire, but by water tall as trees. She shook her head, but he gripped her wrist tightly and whispered, "You belong to more than this island now. You belong to what comes after it." And then came the prophecy's last line. When the sky breaks open, follow not the gods but the birds. Trees ignited, roofs collapsed, the market vanished in flame, and scream by scream, Sertung felt what it had been denied, its final moment. They alone remember the way to higher ground. Those words, "follow the birds," echoed in her skull as she watched flocks migrate, not north or south, but away from the island altogether. She knew the time was short. The signs weren't poetic anymore. They were biological, instinctive, complete. Payman Raka was dying. If she could reach a boat, the old man, who had always sat upright like a mountain, now wheezed from the ash. Black grime clinging to his lungs. The tide had already begun to reverse. Birds circled low. The air pressure collapsed all at once. eyes turned to the east. What they saw should have been impossible. A plume of black fire shot into the air from Krakatoa, higher than any mountain Ayudya had ever seen. "You must go," he said. "Not just to live, but to carry this. Not for the village, for the world." Sunday, August 26th. Early evening. A deafening crack split the sky, waking even the oldest sleepers. The sea rushed away from the shores, pulled by something vast and hidden beneath the ocean. And then came the falling stone. A boy, only 8, a widowed woman, and a man from the eastern huts with a crushed arm. She steered them toward the edge of the reef, in the direction of the birds. Rocks rained from the heavens, hot, jagged, and fast. Thousands. All the others gone. Then dawn broke. A British merchant schooner off the coastline of Lampung on Sumatra's southern tip spotted wreckage. A body floating. The British registrar listed her age as unknown. Her name was Ms. No one believed her when she woke and described what she saw. But among her clothing, they found her bundle and vanished into an empire that didn't want her story. They pulled her from the water, barely breathing, a miracle. Official Dutch reports name coastal towns affected Denia, Teluk Batang, even Java's western provinces, but it is listed as uninhabited. Ayudya pulled her cloth bundle tight, wrapping it around her stomach under her clothing. Then she ran. She wasn't running towards safety. She was running toward what she believed could be saved. The story, the warning, proof, a record. Only the compass and a few pages of the Dutch log survived, misplaced in a Colonial shipping crate headed north to British India. Maps could be redropped, bodies could be buried, but a true story, witnessed and carried, might survive the sea. Once again, waves of silence buried her voice. A disaster, and then a lie told too many times that no one had lived there at all. But you've heard her name now. Ships that sailed through after only saw ocean, a ripple, a void, a ghost, anyone. It's a story that tried to survive the flood and barely did. This is the forgotten file. Former fishing colony erased in eruption, but Dutch colonial officials struck it out. Too many uncomfortable questions, too much blame. Items never officially recorded. Items matching Ayudya's drawings. She sprinted through broken palms and fire, past collapsed houses, over a body she wouldn't recognize until later. It was her mother. But the truth is, the sea remembers, and sometimes, so does fate. But there was no time to howl. A wall of ocean, blacker than the sky, taller than a ship's mast, rising and thundering straight at them, carrying debris, trees, fire. Krakatoa had blown away half its structure. The volcano had collapsed into the void, sending a tsunami racing across the strait at 400 miles per hour. Ayudya screamed, something, a name, a prayer. No one heard it. Then she pushed the canoe into the water. 3 others had followed her. The canoe rocked violently. Ash and steam blurred the sky. The woman behind her cried out, not for help, but in horror. Ayudya turned and saw a shape behind them. Where Sertung had stood was now a chasm of water and air, the island crumbling like sugar, its trees swallowed, its roots torn. They didn't outrun the next wave, but they didn't die on land either. The canoe flipped. In darkness, Ayudya sank. Her eyes were open, watching as moonlight fractured below her. Her lungs burned, arms thrashed, hands tried to grasp someone. Only the cloth bundle stayed with her, tied tight. She stopped struggling, and then she rose. Hours passed. She would spend 6 days unconscious. They burned the journal and most of the drawings at once. fearing disease, or perhaps worse, truth. No one recorded her testimony. No one followed up. She was placed in a holding camp, labeled native refugee. Ayudya survived. The island did not. But more painfully, the memory did not. Modern historians list the Krakatoa eruption as one of the deadliest natural disasters in history. Ships that marked it before 1883 called it fertile, populated, green. Some say a cartographer later tried to add an annotation for it. They say the sea forgets, that it smooths over tragedy like sand flattening the marks of a grave. In 2004, scientists diving near Anak Krakatoa discovered stone blocks and carved anchors beneath coral shelf layers too old to belong to modern settlements. But when they published their photos, the story vanished within weeks. The images flagged as an island, 20,000 lives. Signs ignored. A girl who tried to save them. You know, this is not just history. Her name was Ayudya, but by the time she set foot on the docks at Padang, gaunt, silent, and barefoot, colonial officers had already stripped her of more than shoes and kin. She was now Ayudya, a nameless survivor of an unnamed village, deposited in the side column of a refugee ledger. And so, she vanished into the white space between two volcanoes, buried under centuries of political silence and rising tides. The record ends there. Her voice evaporated into the architecture of empire. What they should have said if someone had cared to translate was this: objects with no names, no explanations, just things. Where had she come from? No one asked. Weeks after the eruption, one of the recovery ships, the HMS, delivered artifacts from disaster-struck islands to officials in British India. Not reshaped, removed, like a scab peeled off the planet. Risk of subsistence platform failure due to volcanic activity is imminent. That was the same warning Ayudya found buried the first time. Among them, a broken compass and 3 fragments of Dutch script so warped from water exposure, they were catalogued as scrap paper and placed in a resale box. The instability mapped beneath the island arc does not support current habitation. Rutgers even referenced a nickname whispered among native porters: the drowned island of the birds, but in every official list, Sertung is missing. The archived notes, shredded during a file reorganization, he never published again. Sertung was none of those things. It told a story exactly opposite of what empires supposed. 4,000 families, others showing multiple fishing harbors. Then, post-eruption, only ocean, as though the island had never drawn breath. In a closed-door seminar, Cornelius Rutgers gently challenged the accepted narrative of Krakatoa's aftermath. But no one ever cross-checked the records, because by then, Sertung no longer existed. Satellite data from today confirms it. The island simply collapsed, pulled beneath the sea in August 1883. Not eroded. She failed because truth couldn't move faster than water, and those in power made sure no one would ever read her words. The Krakatoa eruption, deemed one of the most violent geological events in modern memory, created tsunamis up to 120 feet high, killing over 36,000 people along the coastal belts of Java and Sumatra. It appears on pre-Atine 80s maps, labeled clearly with hand-noted settlements, some listing approx. You don't build houses where no one lives. The post was quickly scrubbed. It's dated 1884. No further context. The second, in the margins of a naval lieutenant's notebook from a British surveying party nearby, looking for evidence of pre-eruption settlements, they sent sonar and submersibles 500 feet down. What once held 20,000 lives, hundreds of stories, songs, births, and deaths, is now just deep water. She told stories of stone altars and rising water. Half-mad, beautiful voice. That's it. No death certificate, no tombstone, just a legacy broken into whispers. Almost 40 years later, a lone Dutch scholar revisited naval logs from the Sunda Strait. His evidence, a Spanish maritime chart from 1877, confirming populated zones. On eyewitness reports of smoke from multiple fishing villages, the missing refugee stats from post-eruption aid trips, because admitting what happened would V meant owning what was ignored, that a disaster didn't just kill tens of thousands. It silenced a culture, it erased a language. Subscribe for more stories, lost to time, buried by silence, and finally brought into the light. Thanks for trusting the forgotten file with this story. That same week, Rutger's lecture transcript was mysteriously removed from the record, and one witness, who tried to shout against the tide, was drowned not just by sea, but by silence. Colonial history often recorded what was economically useful, politically safe, or religiously correct. Maybe because it didn't fit the clean lines of empire. Maybe because listening would have meant guilt. Or maybe because the sea, once it takes memory, rarely gives it back. That a native girl, barely 17, understood seismic threat better than scientists. That her people had recorded natural disaster in petroglyphs long before Europeans arrived. That they prepared, begged for help, and were dismissed because their prayers didn't arrive by telegram. Ayudya didn't fail because she wasn't brave enough. In 2007, a Japanese marine archaeology team, Asterisk, mapped portions of the volcanic shelf south of Anak. What they found has never been published in Western academic journals, but leaked dive footage posted anonymously in 2011 shows human-made structures, carved basalt walls, patterns of what appeared to be burial sites, all directly beneath where Sertung used to be. Even now, the official geological explanation says structural instability due to caldera collapse. No populated territories affected outside of coastal zones. But when one of the dive assistants was asked off camera what he saw, he answered simply, "We found houses." So what happened to Ayudya? There are two final mentions, both faint. The first, in a Malay language letter sent to a church in Malacca, describing a girl who speaks of an island no one remembers. One native woman we encountered insisted she was from the Bird Island. Try to find Sertung on a map today. You won't. It's not there. No pin, no Wikipedia page, not even a blank grey shape. And the only evidence you'll find, scattered hand-drawn charts, misfiled shipping logs, and memories once carried by a forgotten girl in a burning canoe. History didn't forget. History deleted it. It destroyed one of the oldest intact oral histories in Southeast Asia. Not with malice, but with deliberate disinterest. So, I ask you now, why was this story forgotten? But Ayudya saw it. She survived it. And now, you've heard her, you know her name, and you'll help keep her story afloat. If this story moved you, don't let it vanish again. Comment her name. Keep Sertung alive between us.